What's up, guys? Welcome
Hi,
to the
Jake.
program.
Oh man, what a great poster behind you.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
That
so
Thank you. I
you
great.
was
know,
trying to look for something really offensive, and I was like, Rodney's all I got.
it's
Oh yeah. Oh,
well, it's
Spencer
offensive to
Rodney, huh?
me. I mean,
Okay.
no, I've always been a fan, especially Caddyshack. But
Oh yeah. Natural Born Killer.
Natural Born Killers, his cameo is
Damn.
unbelievable.
Mm.
But boy, he did these Miller Lite commercials that were just murder for me in high school. You
Oh,
know,
man.
Oh right.
I couldn't walk around a corner without hearing, "We just need one pin, Rodney."
He's an amazing American story, just that someone could rise to fame at like age 50 or whatever and
Right.
be like, a marquee
Finally
mug.
got that respect.
Exactly.
All right, guys. So welcome the El Duce tapes. Very cool documentary. How did you guys even get into El Duce? Because it's such a controversial character, and I feel like you both come from different backgrounds instead of come from the seedy Hollywood underground punk rock scene.
Well, I mean, or I like to flatter myself when I was younger that I was that I was halfway punk rock, but it wasn't so much something that the two of us sat down and said we should do out of everything subject out there under the sun. We should do a movie about El Duce. So much as our mutual friend Tim Kirk was there in the day, and he helped Ryan Sexton, the guy you see in the movie, shoot that footage some 30 years ago. And was it 3 or 4 years ago now where Tim told me that his friend had all these archives sitting in a mini warehouse someplace, and I suggested he dig it up and let us take a look at what was in there.
It's very
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
it's a
So
rare deal because usually, especially like a rock doc, the people are huge advocates and big fans of the band, and we're fans and interested in like the lead singer and how he resonates today, but not necessarily even like that into the music.
right, I hear you. I'm not a big fan of the music. I mean, as a kid, I listened to it just because, any song, any band that sings about, boobs and golden showers when you're 14, 15, you're like, oh, like that's awesome. But, older, and after seeing this documentary, you're like, man, it's El Duce. Was it your intention to humanize El Duce after seeing all this?
Yeah.
All these,
Well, I
all,
mean, one of the, I think, sort of, mottos, I think we tried to have as we worked through the stuff was humanize them, but not necessarily let them off the hook, right? To
yeah.
tell his story as honestly as we can. And in doing that, some of this is going to be, fairly lurid and over the top. And I think, and I think it was some of the raw, vulnerable human stuff that we saw in the footage, especially when we're talking about, him reminiscing about, sort of the abusive home life that he came from, or his, very close relationship with his sister. You know, there's a half a dozen, kind of fascinating things about El Duce and the Mentors, but I mean, I think it was clear that there was a movie in here just in the juxtaposition of outrageous, offensive, insane performance with a sad, human, vulnerable, kind of person at the core of it.
Yeah, he's definitely a Hollywood legend. I mean, I live in the neighborhood. People have told me about, they're like, oh yeah, I saw El Duce crawl out from behind that dumpster right here 20 years ago. I'm like, really? Like, people see Angeline driving around, they see Lemmy at the Rainbow, and they just see El Duce in an alley, like drinking a
I
beer.
can't tell you how many people we've heard little stories like that from.
Yeah, absolutely. Even people who I know somebody who grew up in Riverside and had stories from him being around the scene there in the later years. But yeah, that he was just out there on the streets for, a good 20 years in Hollywood.
Yeah, he's a dirtbag, but seemed like a nice guy. He was a lovable dirtbag. He wasn't racist. He would share his bottle with anybody. So after watching the movie, I was like, wow, like El Duce. And then read the hidden tidbit at the end. That's when I was like, oh man, like this guy's got a heart. I love this guy. Not I love him, but
Which one do you
Yeah,
mean
there's
by
a few
which one do you mean by
tidbits.
the tidbit?
at the end of the credits, the last thing that you
Oh,
say,
okay.
I think, before.
Uh-oh, where he's like
I don't want
heaven.
to
Oh
ruin
yeah,
it.
yeah, we
People
don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
say
yeah. When
it.
he's recruited to join the Avengers.
all I remember is what he said. He was just like, it was a pretty nice little tidbit where you're like, all right, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun, ending I mean, there's the bonus little tags at the end of the movie or in the credit sequence, but I think structuring the story, ending it on a note where he kind of gets the final word,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
necessarily I don't know if the movie has a happy ending or a positive ending, but when you're dealing with the story of somebody who's dead, and you're structuring that story in the course of a project like this, everything is a choice. And one of the choices we made was, despite the sort of tragic way that he ended, um, to let him have a last word, to end the movie the way he might have wanted it to end,
Yeah.
which is kind of I think we talk about, or we suggest in the course of it, that lots of people lined up to get a pound of his flesh, from Jerry Springer to the PMRC to well, even to what's his face, Nick Broomfield, um, and certainly us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's let him let's give him the last word.
One thing that I found so interesting, well, basically, I watched the El Duce tapes. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I looked up your other work, and I was like, oh, Room 237, haven't seen it. The Nightmare, I saw that, loved it, freaked me out. But I watched Room 237, about The Shining and all like the conspiracies. Then I went back and I watched the El Duce tapes. I'm just watching for Easter eggs. I'm like, okay, what do we got here? Like, I don't think there was any, but it was
not a ton. And I think some people might have expected us to go deeper on the Kurt Cobain
that was
conspiracy.
my next question. Like,
Definitely.
what do you guys think? The whole country, like, his story is that Courtney asked him to kill Kurt Cobain for 50 grand.
Yeah, and that's exact. And didn't that help make Kurt and Courtney a better movie?
Right.
Absolutely.
He had a part to play, and he fucking played it, man.
Yeah, I think, it would be hard to make it to that point at the end of El Duce tapes and not see it as, just a crass publicity stunt, his last sort of great performance on the public stage type of thing. But, if people want to believe that, we're leaving it open to them too, if they choose to believe that.
But I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think one thing you can say about the film, and we try to do a couple of different things. One of them is to try to say, well, who's really who is he really? When is he on stage? When is he in a character? And when is he just being himself? And there are times where it seems like it's clear, but not always.
Yeah, I feel like he was playing this character, and then he sort of just became an alcoholic, got too drunk, and then it just morphed, and you don't know what's what, and he was never sober to even distinguish either of them. So
yeah, I think one time I was trying to describe the movie to somebody, and I said, he was like a scared little boy who created this monster, but then, he couldn't stop it. And the monster, it destroyed him.
Yeah, it's like that. The last line that he says before in the movie he dies is this: "Whatever it takes for an entertainment idea," and that sort of encapsulates him, losing himself in this chase for fame at any cost and having to live up to the character he created.
I definitely get that. El Duce, poor guy. What a mess.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you're saying, poor guy, and we're talking about like, did we humanize him? When since the movie's come out, we've gotten to see some people's reactions and reviews on like Letterboxd and stuff, and there's a healthy amount of people who like enjoyed the experience of the movie, but didn't sympathize with him whatsoever. So it's like we show
he's a
what's
total
behind
scumbag, but you guys did a good job of just showing the softer side of El Duce. I was like, man.
Right, but you don't have to necessarily like him or respect him. It's just, this is what's behind the mask. It's up to you if you go for it or not.
Man behind the mask.
Certainly, I felt felt a fair amount of sympathy by the time by the time we were knee deep into this thing.
Yeah, just the whole thing with like, you really talk about the abuse, his upbringing, and it explains a lot. So you just paint a great picture of this troubled guy.
Well, thanks. It was not easy. This was the longest edit that I'd ever been involved in. I think with the two of us were on it for 2 years, 2.5.
Yeah, about 2.5, the whole process. I mean, we're juggling other stuff while we were doing it and everything, but it was a really long process to find the right balance, because we tried to rely almost exclusively on that archival footage and piece it together, just keep digging into those tapes that Ryan Sexton shot and finding the right way to piece it together.
Was there any resistance, or you could just use that footage? And I wasn't sure if you maybe tried to film some new interviews and people declined, or you just use all.
No, we never considered that. That never seemed interesting to us. The idea of, sitting down with, I don't know, Dave Grohl or contemporary rock guys and then use the footage. Like, I've seen, enough nothing against Dave Grohl, but, I've seen enough sort of contemporary rock docs where the contemporary interview is sort of the is the timeline, is the timeline of the movie, and you use the archives just to illustrate points. But as we saw what was in the footage, what always seemed to be most appealing is to live in those tapes, to make the viewer's experience 1990, 1991, 92 Los Angeles, and not to look back, but to try to make it feel present, to resurrect that experience.
Yeah, just make it as fully immersive as possible. And then, the audience can come up with their own perspective from present day on this stuff and come up with a lot more interesting stuff in a conversation afterwards than we would get from interviewing people.
Or if some journalist wants to round up everybody who was, who was there in the day and get their perspective, I'd be very happy to read an oral history of you asked for it, written today.
Well, thanks, guys. I don't want to take up too much of your time. The El Duce tapes, it's out, it's streaming. Pick it up, and the Blu-ray. Can we expect some extra tidbits on there as well?
Oh, there's no shortage of tidbits.
Yeah, we really packed it in. There's like I guess maybe a couple hours or more of stuff on there altogether. But we've got like over a half hour of deleted clips we've strung together into a great way. And,
that's awesome. What's next for you guys? There's got to be another documentary in the works.
What? I edited a documentary that's on Shudder right now that came out a few weeks ago, November 19th, called Leap of Faith, William Friedkin on The Exorcist. This William Friedkin sort of deep dive into the creative process on that. And I'm editing another documentary from the director of that one right now.
And I've got a new one that is going to come out in the next couple of months called A Glitch in the Matrix, which is about people who have figured out that the world we live in is really just one big video game.
I'm a conspiracy guy. I hear people talking about the synchronization all the time, man.
Yep. Well, we're soaking in it.
That's right. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Keep rocking.
All right. Good to talk to you, Jake. Thanks.
Right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.